So I fly drones commercially, and I also work in the production industry where I am constantly out in the field. And if you do any of those things, then you are probably well aware of how critical it is to have battery and power management, especially when you're pushing your cart and like location is just super far away from base camp. It's kind of just up to you to figure out how to keep things charged. And well, if you're flying drones, especially big drones that take things like, these 6S 5100 milliamp batteries, it becomes very, very important that you are able to continue flying throughout the duration of your job. And that also gets doubly as worse when you're flying like a gimbal lifter and each flight takes up 2 of these bad boys. Now, what I used to do was actually go out to every single job carrying 28 of these. Now you can just imagine how much of an annoyance and cumbersome it is to carry 28 batteries, because I also carry them in cases. So what's a working man to do? Well, you wise up, because lately I've been using a portable power station. Oh, one quick thing. So because my specific use case of this, flying drones out in the field and working in the production industry, I'm going to give you my sort of review and input from that specific perspective. Now, do you realize that there are way more uses for this than just what I do? In fact, you could use it for, camping and basically any time you just need battery power. Or if you don't go out, you could also use this as a UPS. Yeah, you could leave one end plugged in and plug your peripherals into that, and if you ever run into a power outage, you'll have power for days. All right, let's get into it. So this right here is the ECOPLAY EP2400. It's basically a giant battery that you could pretty much plug everything you want into it. And the beautiful thing about this is that I can keep this on my cart, and I only have to carry half of my batteries now. So after using a couple of these now on set, I've come to look for 3 specific things when deciding on a portable power station. The first is ports. Now this specific one has 2 input ports. You've got your regular plug in there, that's where you plug into the wall. This is the fastest way to get this thing charged. And then you've got this other port over here so that you can do things like charge it with your car, which I wouldn't really recommend. But what I would recommend is picking up the solar panel that you could use to charge this here. This is a flap that you lift up whenever you're using it. There's one on the other side, and that just makes sure that you've got proper ventilation. Now moving over to the front, you've got your DC ports over here. You've got a cigarette lighter socket over here, and this is the one that I use pretty often. This is basically an XT60 port. Note that it does 12 volts at 25 amps, which is great because I normally charge my batteries at 10 amps per battery, so I could charge 2 batteries just off of this one port. And just in case you're wondering, this would be the most efficient way to charge your batteries. I'm talking about using something like this guy. It doesn't have its own power supply. This is acting like your power supply. Take your XT60 there, plug it into this bad boy, and you can get 10 amps, or you could run 2 of these and run 20 amps safely. Down below, you've got 2 barrel connectors. These are rated at 3 amps. But for me personally, if you needed to, you could get a barrel connector and connect this directly to your goggles, just in case, let's say, your goggle batteries died, or any other peripheral. Moving over to this side, this is what I get a lot of use out over here. This is basically replaced my USB charging hub, but this basically replaces a lot of charging bricks. Now, personally, I like to use this one right here. This is the a USB-C. Now, noted this one is rated at 100 watts, so I don't have to bring my laptop charging brick anymore. I could just plug it directly in here. And you've got 3 of those actually. You got another one here, and then another 2 here, but these are 20 watts, so just something to note. If you're gonna charge your laptop or something very powerful, use that bottom corner one right there. You've also got a couple up here. These are more typical USB-A, so these would be great for charging things like GoPro batteries. So let's quickly go over the on-screen elements. To the left is your input wattage, and that's a good way of knowing, depending on where you've got this selected, how fast this system is going to charge. Down in the middle, you've got your current state of charge, which the value below tells you how many hours you've got left, which is completely dependent on your output power. So as you've got things plugged into these ports, that value is going to go up, that value is going to change. Now, when you are charging this, that number of hours left turns into how many hours or time you've got until this hits 100%. Now, one thing to note that's pretty unique that I actually really like is this knob right here. This is a variable input selector, and what that does is you can have it go full blast so that you can charge it as fast as possible. However, if you wanted to just kind of take care of your battery more, or you're not necessarily in a rush to charge it, you can turn this knob down, and that way you can charge your battery a little bit slower. Oh, I also forget to mention, you got a nice little LED light right over here. And finally, on the other side is basically what you would probably use more of your peripherals. This is your AC outlet right here, so all the things that you would normally plug into your wall, this is where you do it. Last but not least, up top, you got a little storage compartment. This is where you can store your charging cable, your cigarette lighter adapter, and if you had other things that you wanted to hide and or stash, this would be the place. The second thing that you want to look into when deciding on a portable power station is battery capacity. Now that's normally measured in watt hours, and in this specific model it's got 2048. Now for me personally, that is like the perfect amount, because what that allows me to do is get about 16 charges of these size batteries before I have to recharge the main battery pack. More than enough to get me through the first half of the morning, if not for the rest of the day, because that's essentially 30 packs. Now, I'm not really comfortable giving you examples or calculating the watt hours for your specific application, because I don't know what size batteries that you use. I also don't want to just spit out what the manufacturer talks about, because for some reason they like to use examples like, oh, you could charge your coffee maker for like 100 hours or just something like that. So just take it with a grain of salt. Definitely do some math, go online and look at some conversions. If you're working in the drone industry or really any industry or whatever you plan to use this for where you're using batteries, it's pretty easy to calculate watt hours. Just take your nominal voltage and multiply it by the amperage of the battery, and that gives you watt hours, which should give you a very rough estimate of how many times you'll be able to charge that using this specific model having 2048 watt hours. What I can say for all my drone friends is that charging one of these 6S 5100 milliamp packs, just doing a little bit of averaging, it looks like we're getting about 600 milliamps per percent. Okay, now just again, take that with a grain of salt, but that's more or less what I'm getting. Alright, so the last thing that I look for when deciding on a portable power station, which is actually the most important for me, is how fast can it charge? How fast can it charge in an hour? Now you might be asking, Tommy, why an hour? Well, that's because in production you typically get a 1 hour lunch break, and that's when you usually have access to shore power so that you can charge the bad boy back up. Now this particular model, I usually average about battery charges before going to lunch. And what I've noticed is that from starting at 100, that usually brings me back down to about 36%. And in charging that for, right about an hour, I'm usually back up to 86, 87, 88%, which is fantastic because, again, that gives me like another 14 batteries, another 14 charges for the rest of the day. So this specific model for me and the kind of batteries that I charge and how often I'm flying has been more than enough. I've actually gone some days where I've never even had to charge it because I just had enough batteries to spare and last me through the entire day. If you're wondering how easy it is, basically it's a matter of just hitting this button to basically power the unit. As you can see, you got that over there. You'll start hearing a little fan go on. And then whatever one of these sockets that you're plugging into, then you're just gonna hit this button to basically turn that circuit on. In this case, I just turned on the USB hub. If you were plugging something in over here, then you would hit the power button here. Easy peasy, simple as that. Charging it is just as easy. Let's go back to this side over here. You just plug your thing in there. This thing automatically turns on and knows what you're doing. Just remember, you don't turn on. You open your flaps to make sure you get adequate airflow. All right, so if I've helped you make some decisions here today on this specific power supply, again, obviously go do your research and figure out what's good for you, then check out the links below. I reached out to the folks over at ECOPLay and let them know that I was going to be making a review video and see if they would be interested in some type of discount code, and they said yes. So if you're interested in this specific one, great, check out the video description. That'll be down below. Otherwise, my name's Tommy, and I will see you on the next one.